Good morning. We are live on YouTube and Twitter, but we also want to be live on Facebook. So we're bringing in Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons and Scott Kennedy Sports. That's me. I know. I'm unoriginal. So as those come in, welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons podcast on Coast to Coast Football. We're coast to coast because I'm in Atlanta and this guy over here, Nick, is in Seattle. So we are coast to coast with your football coverage. And we're not even just coast to coast right now. We're international. I wasn't real sure. I'm like, we're going to talk some draft again. We want to move forward with some roster breakdowns, wins, losses. We can hit all those things. But you know what? The NFL gave us a little bit today with the international release, and we can talk some actual games and who's coming up. Nick, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty well. Computer was a little slow starting up this morning. I did an update last night. I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on? But we're here now, and it's beautiful outside, man. I almost don't want to go to work. I want to go outside and do something all day, but probably end up still in the office.
It's starting to be like that spring, spring fever, and the kids here get out so early. They're out of school like May 23rd. They go back August 1st, but they're out early. So we got some serious spring fever going on around here. Speaking of spring fever, I want to say hello to some folks while the chat is kind of finding its way out into the Facebook verse and YouTube verse. So if you're listening to this after the fact, and we're starting to get a lot of listens on the podcast side of things, we are live every Monday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. YouTube.com/Scott Kennedy. Pretty easy to find. Michael Ranquillo has found us. Thank you, sir. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. Kevin F., who finds us on Facebook and YouTube, is on YouTube today. He says, good morning, guys. I usually miss Mondays, but anxiously await your Wednesday podcast. Appreciate you being here for sure. Jeremy Sean says, happy hump day, fellas. And Roger Cook says, afternoon all and hump day. That sounds kind of rude. I just can't ever remember. One of my friends I worked with was absolutely obsessed with the Hump Day Geico commercial. So, he was about 6'7". He was a volleyball player.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd walk into the studio and be like, Hump Day, yeah. So, Roderick, if you haven't seen the Geico Hump Day commercial, do a quick Google. It's pretty fun. Larry Sims says, rise up. Good morning, everyone. And Jeremy has a quick comment. He says, I don't understand the hype around schedule release. I guess the videos will be cool, but we already know which teams are playing. And frankly, I don't care about the videos. And I didn't really get it either until, the last 3 years I've been working in the NFL stuff. I did college football and high school football recruiting for years before that and wasn't really as involved in the NFL on the media side. But now that I am, it's just another, I think someone said in here, a drip. It's like, it's making it more real. Like it's almost back. We've had the draft. Here's the schedule, keep you engaged. And it makes it feel like the season is closer. It gives you something to hold on to because there's news to talk about. Another week goes by. Hey, it's now June and we're talking OTAs. So it helps keep everybody connected a little bit better, I think. And I am kind of excited to see the schedule release. I was pretty excited to see the international games this morning. And so I get it more now than I used to, for sure.
I mean, anything that we can get content, right? The excited to talk about, get us through the doldrums that is summertime in football. So is it overhyped? Yeah, it's silly. It's fun. We already know the opponents that they're playing, but yeah, why not be silly and fun with it? That's kind of my motto in most things in life. So enjoy it and hopefully look forward to some of the games. And I'm enjoying, the whole international aspect of this. I mean, finding out some of these big matchups too coming forward. I mean, Broncos hopefully aren't going to play, 5 times in prime time like they did last year. Like, hide us away until we've earned it. Talking for the Broncos, avoid that. But yeah, I mean, the international games are now playing in Germany. It's going to be a lot of fun. So international games and kind of fun. We've talked about this before, and it's kind of been a talking point with a lot of people in the NFL for a while. But are the Jags, are they just going to make that move to London here full time coming up? I mean, just they're playing 2 games in London this season. They're staying over there for 2 weeks, and we got Cristiano also coming in saying, "Morning, y'all. Good morning to you, Cristiano. Hope you're doing well. Happy Wednesday to you."
Yeah, and the Jacksonville that's who the Falcons are playing. They're playing Jacksonville, and Jacksonville was, when I went over to London last year with Denver Broncos, they were playing the Jaguars, and it was a home game for the Jaguars. The Falcons will play a home game for the Jaguars. I haven't looked at it, but their next game, the Jaguars are on back-to-back weeks, and their second game, who was the second game against the Bills?
At Tottenham.
Tottenham, but the
Tottenham.
Spurs Stadium. Tottenham.
Yeah.
It's Tottenham.
Tottenham.
Yeah. My dad called it, they're a big rival with Chelsea in London, and my dad called it Totteringham, and I didn't correct him. I'm like, you just keep calling it Totteringham, but it's Tottenham Hotspurs Stadium. The Falcons are at Wembley, and this one has the Bills listed second, so they might not get back-to-back home games. Maybe Wembley is their home stadium for their London home stadium. But went there last year. Great turnout, but Broncos country traveled very well too, and it's a pretty easy trip for Atlanta, Buffalo, Jacksonville to get over to London. In fact, I actually flew up. Little secret here for traveling. I flew JetBlue for like $100 up to Boston because I'd never been. And Boston to London was like $450. Atlanta to London was like $1,100. So I got there and back and got to go in and see Wrigley Field for the day and just kind of mess around for like $650 instead of $1,200. So there's ways to game the system a little bit. I had to book separate tickets, and I wasn't checking luggage and any of that stuff, and I was traveling alone, so it was real easy. But definitely different ways to do that. But Jeremy asked why more do I get it now as far as the excitement? It is. It's just makes it feel like things are closer. The scheduling helps. It just helps it feel like it's more real. The 2023 season is closer to us. It's not May. And, Nick, when you said helps pass the doldrums, I always said, hey, that's what baseball's for.
Speaking of baseball, you got it mixed up there. Just got to correct you. The Wrigley's in Chicago, Fenway.
I went to Fenway. Sorry. Yeah. Yep. Fenway. I'd never been to Fenway. I've been to Wrigley. I'd never been to Fenway. I'd never been to Boston. Yeah. So it's like, well, I'll book like a 5-hour layover. Took the train into Boston and walked around, went and had lunch at Fenway, and then flew over to London. But I did it real cheap, so that was a good trip. So there's ways to do it, ways to work the system. Don't just go Atlanta to London. Search. No. Do JFK to London. Ooh. $500. Okay, Atlanta to JFK. Atlanta to Newark. I'll take the train over to JFK. There's different ways to work it around here.
Gotta be thrifty.
Costin says, rise up. Good morning, Philip Hogginson in Montana, our Montana Hogginson. And, when I saw this, Jeremy asked, I don't understand the hype around the schedule. I saw Sean Edwards come in here and I said, well, this is your answer right here. That's why. And for those of you listening, it's football in all exclamation points. That's why, because it's not actual football, but it's close. It makes it feel like it's closer. And that's part of it. Joe Cannon says, great morning, Scott and Nick. How about that schedule? So the other games also, I've seen the Christmas Day game, one of them. There might be more than one, but they usually do two. Why do one when we can have the whole day to ourselves? Was the Giants and Eagles. The October 1st is the first international game is the Falcons versus Jaguars at Wembley Stadium in London. Jacksonville Bills at Hotspur Stadium, Spurs Stadium in London. That's north, kind of east London, I think. I haven't seen that stadium yet. I haven't seen Arsenal Stadium either. They're both North London, and those are big rivals. Chelsea's like, yeah, we hate you too, but these two are out for blood, Arsenal and Spurs. And then Baltimore and Tennessee on October 15th wraps up the NFL UK. Then Miami and Kansas City. Now, that's a pretty nice showpiece game for playing in Frankfurt, Germany. They were in Munich last year. They went back, and they're in Frankfurt this year. And then the Colts and the Patriots. Now, I thought it was a little ironic that the Patriots are, the red, white, and blue Patriots are playing overseas, but is that the point?
Just a popular franchise, large fan base, and that's a good game. I'm happy to get out there in Frankfurt. I mean, expanding in Germany is a good market. One of my best friends is coming up from Germany here in a few weeks. I'll have to give him a hard time to get to one of those games. He lives in Augsburg. But the game that really surprises me here is the Chiefs actually being sent overseas to play the Dolphins in Frankfurt, with the Chiefs being the home team on that list. I had heard that maybe this is, just being anti-Chiefs or, my realm. But I'd heard the Chiefs are lobbying pretty damn hard to not be sent overseas, playing we won the Super Bowl. We have Patrick Mahomes. You shouldn't take away a home game from us. Like we shouldn't have to go overseas. And glad to see if that was the case, the NFL stick to their guns. I mean, you're a big draw and you're trying to expand that NFL market over Europe. I mean, it makes sense to send them, but
who's the most visible player in the NFL right now?
Oh, it's obviously Justin Simmons, Patrick Surtain, those guys, superstars. No, it's Mahomes. Yeah,
I'd say it's Mahomes. I'd say the closest one, arguably would be still Aaron Rodgers, but I think he's kind of alienated himself away from the super mega hype, where he still does some media. But I think Patrick Mahomes. Golly, Wrigley Field, Fenway, Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is probably the he's the face of the NFL right now.
Who do you think would be third? Let's just going down a little bit. Because when you said who's second, I did not think Rodgers immediately. Maybe it's because he's been so weird and off in this whole charade. I've kind of tuned him out. But to me, my mind immediately goes to Joe Burrow for the number 2.
He doesn't do enough other things though. He's not. Yeah. Joe Burrow could walk into. He could go into Anyville, USA, and walk into a gas station, and no one would recognize him. He doesn't have the national ad campaigns. Everybody knows who Aaron Rodgers is from the national campaigns, the State Farm stuff, where and he's done much more than that. When you start getting those big national campaigns, that's when you are the Q rating is what it is, without having to say who it is underneath. It's like you see an ad for deodorant and stuff, and it says, former NFL linebacker, and it's got their name on there. It's like, thanks, because I didn't know who the hell that was.
Yeah. Well, Joe Burrow's time, I think, is coming in that regard with the other setting suns. He's got a little bit more swagger to him than Justin Herbert and some of those other guys.
I think he's got a great personality, and he will be that guy. But I think Aaron Rodgers for Q rating right now is still probably second. Q rating for us, Albert Knopwish saying good morning, y'all. Appreciate you being here. Let me see. And a Hotspur, a rash, impetuous person. Yeah, the Tottenham Hotspurs. And we're talking English. Yeah, but we were talking London. We were talking London teams. As far as English teams, he says, give me Liverpool. Yeah, I got a lot of respect for Liverpool. I started watching about 10 years ago the Premier League, and that Liverpool team was incredibly unlikable. Anybody that has Luis Suarez on it, I'm going to root against. If he joined my son's soccer team, I would root against them. He's just a despicable person. But once Jurgen Klopp came to Liverpool, their style changed, and they became for a neutral, they became a really, really fun team to watch. But I had already picked a team by then, but I could see why, Liverpool, I know why they've got a ton of fans with their history, but I know why they would have gotten a bunch more recently as well. Let me see. And Jeremy says, turn on incognito mode when searching flights. That makes sense because you'll search a flight, come back an hour later and search it again, and it's up $150. That might be why. So good tip. Let's get into this. Falcons and Jaguars game here. There's another storyline that's a little bit interesting in there, and that's Calvin Ridley. Mm-hmm. You want Calvin Ridley to have a good season for the Jaguars, but not necessarily you don't want him to have a good game at the expense of the Atlanta Falcons. I believe once he makes a team that fourth upgrades to a third, or the fifth to a fourth, and then it can, depending on if he re-signs after this year, gets a new contract, it could go all the way up to a second round pick, Nick.
I think it's fourth, third, second is the escalators there. So yeah, Calvin Ridley will be interesting. This Jags team is really interesting. I mean, they got the Peterson has got them playing pretty good football. They played the Chiefs last year in the playoffs closer than pretty much any team that went up against them, other than the Eagles. So that's a tough game. I guess I'd be happy for Atlanta that it's not according to how the schedule looks from Adam Schefter, it's not taking away from a home game from Atlanta. But this will be a tough game. On the surface right now, I'd probably take the Jags, but both these teams are greatly improved and heading in the right direction. And I really like what both these offenses do as well. They're kind of somewhat match each other. I mean, obviously you're going to, no offense to Falcons in here, but I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence over Desmond Ridder. But building up, big offensive line infrastructures, wanting to play through the offensive line and be a tough, very tough and physical team up front. So that should be a hell of a game. If it wasn't so early in the season, I'm like, hey, maybe it'd be worth it to take the trip to London. But that looks like it's going to be a fun one.
We should have a pretty good idea who's who by that point. That should be week 5, week 4, is it?
I think
it just has a date. I didn't see which week it was.
It's week 4.
Week 4. I was like, it's got to be week 4 or 5.
Yep.
No, I don't think it's a bold statement to say I would take Trevor Lawrence over Desmond Ridder. That's pretty obvious right now. Trevor Lawrence is one of the best quarterback prospects to come out in the last 10 years and hasn't played down to anything else right now. I mean, I'm going to say he's the best quarterback in the league for the last 10 years, but as far as prospect goes, he's shown everything that you wanted when you drafted him. Now it's building the team around them. And I thought Doug Peterson was a great hire. We've gone through several coaching searches together, Nick, and, sometimes the retreads aren't necessarily a bad thing. You can have a good coach whose message isn't getting through anymore. But he can now go through, Cristiano's talking Luis Suarez, and that always throws me off. I always don't want to get bitten, Yeah, Luis Suarez bites people on top of that. But I like Doug Peterson a lot. I really do. I kind of thought of him like the John Fox hire back in the day. Just a very good coach. We call it an adult in the room after the nonsense that was Urban Meyer at Jacksonville. I thought that was the right coach. But, they've spent some money and they've got a nice team. You start looking at the offense and how do you think their offensive line is going to hold up? They've lost some offensive tackles, including one to suspension here recently.
Yeah, it will be interesting, man. You got to worry about the offensive line for sure for that unit and tackles. There's just not enough of them. So once you're losing starters there, it can get pretty precipitous drop off in talent. So definitely want to watch for that. But more of these international games. I did want to talk a little bit about the Dolphins and the Chiefs in that one. I mean, what a game. Two teams that are pretty interesting at that point. I'm curious to see how that Chiefs defense holds up against. I mean, talk about matchups. We mentioned Calvin Ridley up against his old team, but now we got the Tyreek Hill matchup here with KC, a team that that's a rare situation, honestly, where I felt like both teams won the trade. The Chiefs were able to remake their identity in terms of the offensive side, becoming a little bit more of a power-oriented team, investing draft picks in edge rusher, cornerback, and what was their other first-round pick last season? I can't remember. But
they got Karlaftis last year.
Karlaftis at edge. They got the small cornerback from Byron Murphy, was it? I can't remember the name of the small quarterback from Washington. I thought they had 3 first-round picks. I cannot recall.
3, did they? I can always check, though. Wouldn't be that hard.
Okay. They
Kansas
took
City Chiefs. They didn't pick for a while. Trent McDuffie.
Okay, I mixed up my small University of Washington cornerbacks there. Trent McDuffie was the other one, and then they took Sky Moore early as well. So they kind of redid their identity, built the team, and then the Miami Dolphins have become everybody's favorite team on Madden. Adding Jalen Waddle, adding Tyreek Hill, and now adding Devon Achane. So that's going to be a very fun matchup.
You got a track team out there,
unbelievable speed. And also the thing about the Dolphins that I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm going to believe that Tom Brady's not playing the moment I see he's in that booth calling that game for Fox. And there's been flirtations in the past about Miami, Stephen Ross and Tom Brady, obviously a Michigan connection there. And Miami lost their first round pick this year because of tampering with Tom Brady the year prior. So I don't know. I hate Tom Brady, but I'm secretly hoping that he comes back because that would be amazing
this time. I really do. Like last year I said Aaron Rodgers is not going anywhere. This year I said he is. I could feel it. This time, I was kind of waiting like you. This time I think he's done. I think he's done this time.
I think you're right, but I hope you're not right because I would really enjoy that if he was able to come back. Just fun.
Will see. I just hope Tua stays healthy. That's the big one for me, but should be an interesting game. Let's dive back into the chat here a little bit. Let me see here. Wanted to talk about Jason Hiller coming on Facebook. He says, Scott, I did a mock draft next year and they have the Falcons picking 6th. so disrespectful. And they run on Super Bowl odds on that right now and over under win totals usually. But I would think that the 8.5, which is their Vegas over under win totals, would put them better than 20 minus 4 plus 1. Was that 25th best record?
Mhm.
So picking 6th, I would think I would agree with you on that one. No, it'd be like 27th. Anyway, top 6
Yeah.
would be I have a hard time picturing them getting worse, Nick.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the questions here? Okay. What are the questions for the Atlanta Falcons? There's a ton of newness on defense. You got a new defensive coordinator and you got a bunch of new bodies. Okay. What's the counter to that, Nick?
They were absolutely dreadful the last 2 seasons.
They were terrible anyway.
Yeah, that's not. I don't think the newness is. What are they falling off from?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Oh, yeah, it might take a little while for that defense to come together. And
Yeah,
you mean it could come together because it hasn't? They've been going out there with duct tape and former Bears guys, and I think they're just duct taping over the logos with Titans and Bears guys out there. The defense was undermanned to say the least. So if it takes a little while, you should be better automatically just with the people you're putting on the field. I love Dean Pease. I think he did a magnificent job getting that team from like 31st to like 22 or 23 in yards and points and stuff. That was solid. So, Desmond Ridder, okay, we don't know you got in Desmond Ridder. Okay, was Marcus Mariota the savior? Did they win 7 games last year because Marcus Mariota, now they're not going to win any? That would be a good Lamar Jackson argument if you went 7-10 with Lamar Jackson at quarterback and you went from him to Desmond Ridder. But you're going from Marcus Mariota. Desmond Ridder was 2-2 in his starts. And if you throw out his first start, he had a 94.4 quarterback rating over his last 3. That would have put him somewhere along the line of 13th and ahead of guys like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert. Now, that's a small sample size, but why do we assume already he's going to fail? It's like, okay, we don't know that he's a positive, but that doesn't automatically make him a negative. That makes him an unknown. He's an X factor. So, yeah, I have a hard time picturing this team getting worse this coming season. Other than that, Arthur Smith, the team rebels on him and his message isn't getting through and they quit playing for him. That's about the only thing that makes any sense to me. And that's not going to happen. This team loves him. If anything, the Falcons have played hard the last 2 seasons. So I'm with you on this one, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, people are just not going to believe the Falcons until they see it with their own eyes because they've been an afterthought team for the last, 4 or 5 years, and Desmond Ridder comes in with very little pomp and circumstance. So you're going to see him ranked high with that kind of thing. You're going to hear Colin Cowherd talk smack about that, and then, go out there and play football and prove them wrong. I think that's one that you can choose to be offended by it, and that's fine. But this is how it's going to be.
Understand. That's 5-12.
Yeah.
That's 6-11. I have a hard time picturing this team going backwards.
Yeah, me too. But we are acutely aware and understand this team and what they've done to build around them. I mean, with what they did in free agency, the direction they were heading last season, how poor Mariota was last year, how they schemed up, lesser players with that offense. And now you're adding better players back. I guess the one caveat that I would have here is that obviously injuries can happen. And what if Kyle Pitts doesn't come back right, or it takes him, almost the full year? What do your passing weapons look like? Because that's one where you have Drake London, who was great last season. Mm-hmm. After that, it's a question mark if Kyle Pitts is out. So that's one where maybe on top of injuries, maybe things kind of fall apart there. But I'm not super duper worried about, the Falcons picking 6 overall. I think it's a better question of where are they going to be at? Are they going to be above 500? Because I'd set them, what were they, 7.5, 8.5?
Yeah, it was 8.5, which I think is fair.
9-8
sounds reasonable to me. Mm-hmm. I think the 8.5 line sounds fair. And if 8.5 is the line, they're not picking 6th. No. If they win 8 or 9, they're not picking 6th. They're picking 16th.
Yep.
17th, 18th. So I agree with you on that one. Chris Walker coming in on Facebook says, good morning, everyone. Happy hump day. Appreciate you being here. And Kevin Mapp has made his way in over on Facebook as well. So thank you for being here. And Chris has a question about the Falcons. He says, so do you think the offensive line gets better at pass protection, or is it about as good as it gets just be glad when we run block and deal with it. What do you think so far based on who you've got there? The presumptive starters going into the season: Jake Matthews, left tackle; Matthew Bergeron, left guard, rookie; center Drew Dahlman, right guard Chris Lindstrom, right tackle Caleb McGarry, plus is it Jonnu Smith that they signed as one of the tight ends?
Traded.
Kyle Pitts is back. Keith Smith, fullback, is back, I believe. So that's kind of your core of pass protection.
And your running backs, Bijan's pretty good in that aspect as well, and Tyler Algier. So as far as pass protection goes, I mean, we kind of saw what the market said about Caleb McGarry. Pretty good run blocker, but what'd you pay him for? 3 years, $25 million or something, when right tackles are getting paid massive money. I don't know what his trajectory or projection would be as a pass protector. They did a lot last year to cover him up and hide him as best as possible from pure drop back, ISO one-on-one situations. And it worked well for the offense. So also with Desmond Ridder, with the running options you have, how often are you going to have to be that pure drop back game? I mean, just the way the team is built right now, you can continue to isolate him some. You're not paying big money for him to be this, amazing ISO in space pass protector either. So I think you're going to have some limitations there still. If you fall behind, 14 points and it's the fourth quarter and you're going up against, Myles Garrett or some equal caliber edge rusher, there might be some bad plays here and there on the side.
That's true for just about anybody.
And I was going to say that's true for most teams, but that's where I am. That's where I'm with it. I mean, obviously you can see some improvements because McGarry is still, under 30 years old, and you have him for control for 3 years. On the other side, though, you could see Jake Matthews start to dip a bit given his age and where he's at. So I think probably safest bet is going to stay about the same overall, but just due to continuity, maybe improvements from the quarterback position, better weaponry in terms of the running game, that it should look better. But I think the personnel and actual talent is probably going to stay about the same.
I think the offensive line should be better for the reasons that Nick just finished with. And the other part is that I think there's an improvement in Matthew Bergeron over Eli Wilkinson. I thought Eli Wilkinson played fair. That he was an average to a little bit better than average left guard was a massive improvement from 21 to 2022. When Jalen Mayfield was graded by PFF as the worst pass blocking offensive lineman in football, period. Of guys that had enough snaps to qualify, Jalen Mayfield was the worst in football. So getting average was a big help. Now you might be able to get even a little bit better. Matthew Bergeron should be a better player and should, if he can stay healthy, because Eli only played 11 games last year. Drew Dahlman turned the corner last season. He started playing really well. He was mid-season. He was like, okay, the Falcons are really going to have to look at center. Last 5-6 game of the season, maybe coinciding with Marcus with the switch at quarterback, but when the switch at quarterback happened, Drew Dahlman also started playing better at center. So I think those two players will be better. And then even if you just get status quo across the line, you've gotten better. Throw in all the factors that Nick mentioned between the third year in the system, third year coaching, the maturity, the familiarization of that unit as a whole, knowing who's got what assignments, and I can step out here because I know my backside is covered. All of those type of things. Plus, you got two pretty good blocking running backs. Yeah, I think pass protection should be better. The question then is, do you have guys that can get downfield? How long are you going to have to hold? How long are you going to have to hold to pass, to hold the men, to create a pocket to hold so guys can get downfield? These guys are fast. But, Kyle Pitts still isn't a true downfield threat from, what you would normally think of as your speed burning wide receiver who's stretching the defense.
The other aspect of this is Ridder going to be aggressive down the field. That was one of the issues with him at Cincinnati. He was keenly aware that if he just, drove the bus, they were going to win a lot of games. Never really actually had to be aggressive or hunt for the big plays. Yeah. And sometimes you gotta, there's a former offensive coordinator for the Iowa Hawkeyes, Coach Don Brown, used to always say that you don't make big plays unless you're looking for big plays. And that's something with Desmond Ridder. Just on his tape, you didn't see the hunting for the explosives.
I think we'll see him. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be, okay, this guy's faster, because these guys are bigger. So I'm going to counterpoint my own point here. When I've got Kyle Pitts and I have Drake London lined out wide and I see single coverage out there, I'm 3-step dropping and punting the ball, basically. Throwing a nice long high fade and letting them run under it and say my guy's better than your guy. That's you've got a little bit more space to get downfield that way. So short answer, yes. I think the Falcons will be better at pass protection. Want to come in, Gary Palmer, supporting the show. Thank you, sir. Getting us started, breaking the ice with some green here, literally. Nice green super chat. And just a reminder, like Gary, that super chats and Facebook stars are the most direct way to support Nick and I in the shows that we do. So thank you to Gary for coming in with a super chat, my friend. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott. And good morning to you as well. Kevin agrees with me. He says Brady's done. I agree. But here's an interesting take. Are the Colts going to regret their number one with Anthony Richardson? Because right now they're getting a lot of plaudits for that. They're getting a lot of, hey, this was a really nice pick. But it's a risky pick. But I think if he could have gone anywhere, going to Shane Steichen as a new coach with a long runway, a long leash, I think he's in as good a situation he could have asked for.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Mapp, notorious Anthony Richardson hater. So now we'll see who ends up being right on that. It's definitely possible that they could end up regretting it, but that offensive infrastructure is not great out there. When you spend that money, much money on a guard, and you don't build around it. Besides that, it's some issues, but we'll see what it looks like out there. And clowns are pretty scary also. So we'll see what happens with Richardson and Brady being done. I think the NFL is more interesting when Brady's back, and to add him to that. And it's bad for the Broncos because Miami seems to be a team that would probably be fighting them for one of those wild card spots. So adding Brady to that team. I'm also not really a Tua believer. I think that last season they had that easy button, and once the teams kind of started to take that away from those RPO looks, is like, okay, well, now what do we move on to? And they had no answer for that. They couldn't run the ball, and Tua couldn't really push the ball vertically either. And also the concussion stuff with Tua. So I'm hoping for it just from a narrative standpoint. That could be interesting, but I think it's unlikely. I'd say it's like 95% Brady's done. But man, it'd be fun.
I like the Richardson pick. I know I'm getting caught up in the tools here as well and the trusting of the coaching, but that's it. The tools. And I like the coach. I like the situation. And if it doesn't work out, I can move him to tight end. And I've got another Kyle Pitts. I mean, that's who he when you're looking at this guy, who does he comp to? Kyle Pitts, who jumps higher, who's 6'4", 250 pounds, running the 4.4s with a 40-inch vertical leap. And he's got a good release and a good arm. He doesn't have this big, ugly, awkward release.
That's a pretty release.
Terrell Pryor was a number one super hyped quarterback coming out of high school. He was a basketball player too. And he was a number one player on Scout. And you get those things out as early as you can. I was director of scouting, and I trusted my guys that were out there in the field. I'm like, okay, listen, we got to get this in. Give me your top 100 guys. We'll mix them together, and then we'll talk to you about who's going to be number one overall. And I went and watched like the top 5 from each region. And my friend Bob Lichtenfels was handling the East, and Terrell Pryor, I'll come back around. I said, my God, he can't throw. This guy cannot throw. That's not Anthony Richardson. I don't look at Anthony Richardson and think this guy should be moved to wide receiver. I see a nice, clean release and a strong arm. Even Tim Tebow, who could throw, he just had too long a release for the NFL. He passed for a zillion yards at Florida. Don't tell me he couldn't throw. And Terrell Pryor could throw well enough in an Urban Meyer system at Ohio State to get away with it, but he should have been a wide receiver for the NFL purposes right away. Anthony Richardson can throw. The tools are all there. So we'll see. And I think he's going to get a chance to play early. He might not start, and he may throw 1 for every 2 passes that Gardner Minshew throws in the first couple games. But by the time we're talking, Frankfurt, Germany, he might be the starter, and it could be real interesting to watch him play.
One of the most interesting players in the upcoming season and going forward, just because if it hits, it's incredible, but a lot of risk. Obviously, 1-year starter. I mean, we've hashed Anthony Richardson on here a lot, and I think he's got equal chances. He's more likely to bust than he is to become an absolute superstar. But you're chasing
for everybody.
That's true. Yep, that's true. But for a quarterback, at least me, speaking, you're chasing superstars. I'm not looking to draft Mac Jones in the first round. Like, miss me with that. I'd rather flame out entirely than use a first round pick on, just a single bunting to get on at the quarterback position. That's not my style.
Yeah, I don't know that, Joe Burrow's got a nice arm. I don't know that he was the super toolsy guy when you compare him to Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert.
It was Herbert. No,
or,
Josh Allen.
Well, and who fits in that mold a little bit now is, Josh Allen, is Bryce Young.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Young doesn't have an absolute rocket for an arm. He just certainly doesn't have the tools, but he can play. So it's going to be a very interesting quarterback class, for sure. When we were talking about the improvements on defense that the Falcons have made, why they weren't any good, and Ryan reminds us, is when half of your salary cap is eaten up in dead money, it's hard to build a team. Yes, it is. And I was hoping, and so far I like what I've seen. Was Terry Fontenot going to be, I've learned how to live and count my pennies and scrape by and cut coupons in order to get by. And now I've come into some money. Now I've got my first real job and I can go out and buy things. Do I go and splurge it? Or am I the redneck lottery winner that's broken 10 years because I overspend on stupid stuff? That was kind of what I was waiting to see. What happens with the Falcons when they have some available salary cap? They go overspend on some big shiny new toy. No. Did they pay? I think it was one of the criticisms. They paid market value for their big ticket free agent, Jesse Bates. So what?
Yeah.
I like market value. I'm okay with that. Did they overspend? No. Did he overspend on any of these guys? Maybe a little, but they had money to spend. So I was very excited to see what Terry Fontenot can do. And I think they've gotten very good value for the players that they have brought in. And they knew they needed a bunch of good players.
Yeah.
Which is what they've done, Nick, especially on that defensive side of the ball. And they built through the draft, and the offense, most of the pieces were in place as is, that they spent their money on defense.
Yeah, I mean, really for the Falcons, you're talking defense here. It's just, can you get a couple or one superstar difference maker up front on the defensive line? I mean, that's really looking at this team. I mean, you could still, toss resources at the secondary in terms of depth at cornerback. That's a question long term. But getting a true alpha interior or edge rusher on that defense would take them from probably what's an average defense this upcoming season on paper, talent-wise. Maybe it'll be better because of the scheme, but talent-wise, they have good pieces, but not the true difference makers on that defensive line. I think Grady Jarrett would be like an excellent. I don't see him as like one of the you have to scheme him out no matter what. Like the first thing when your teams come this next week is they put Grady Jarrett up on the screen and be like, okay, what are we doing to stop this guy? He's great.
I don't know. Falcons though, because he's the only one up front they had to worry about. You've never seen Grady Jarrett play with anybody else on the defensive line, ever.
Yeah, that's true.
So he was. I'll never forget the clip in 2021. They had him mic'd up, and he's getting triple teamed. He goes, "Damn, y'all don't have anybody else to block?" No, we don't. And turning him, and again, him having to move outside to an end position, that's not where he's best. Put him inside, let him and Onyemata play together, and it could be fun. But no, I agree. He's not Aaron Donald, don't get me wrong, but he's a multi-Pro Bowl high motor problem on the defensive line. And big fan of Grady Jarrett.
And we do have some lines coming out for these international games that have been announced. Falcons, Jags are favored by 4. October 1st, Jags, Bills. Bills are favored by 3.5. These lines are via DK Sportsbook. We have Ravens favored by 3.5 over the Titans. Dolphins are underdogs by 5.5 points to the Chiefs, and then Patriots are 5-point favorites over the Colts. So will be interesting to watch those matchups, see how the lines shift. Obviously, if any of those really stand out to you, it's like that doesn't make any sense. Put those bets in now because the lines will change.
It's way too early to tell. Yeah, I need 4 weeks. I'm like one of those algorithms that you got to have enough sample size in there for me to start thinking, okay, does that make sense? Right now it's you just don't know. Albert Knoppers is bringing up something. I don't know much about this, Nick. He says, but what do you think of the suspended lines players because they place bets in their facility? The NFL gets paid as well because of betting. I call hypocrisy. they have books in the stadiums in London where you can go in and place your bets. It's like a horse racing track. I don't know. I didn't know that they had that in NFL stadiums, but yeah, I mean, if it's the vending machine sitting there and I go and put a bet on the Braves, now, the cardinal rule is you do not bet on your own sport. But if they go in and, if Bijan Robinson walks in and says, "Oh, the Longhorns are against the Huskers," yeah, let me go up to the vending machine and do that. You're suspending those guys. That's pretty hypocritical.
I mean, they're announcing the suspensions, and then NFL. Your games today is brought to you by
DraftKings.
DraftKings, yeah. Get your bets in, but not you in the corner, NFL player. Yeah, it's as long as you're not betting on your own sport, I don't give a hoot about it.
I've never ever one of the things that the do as I say and not as I do angers me to a point I can hardly speak. That's why I hate politicians, pretty much. Different rules for me than they. No, you're not better than I am. You don't get different rules than I do.
Yeah.
So I don't like that. Kevin Mapp says, when we were talking about, the disrespect, says we've been disrespected for so many years. It's just par for the course. The only thing that will ever change is a Super Bowl win. The last several years, I don't think the Falcons have been disrespected. They've been bad. I think Desmond Ridder is being disrespected. I think he is, it's like, well, why do you think that, Scott? Well, thank you for asking. Because he's automatically being put down as a negative. That's why. There's no benefit of the doubt. There are people that will say, well, they've still got questions at quarterback, but then answer their own question. The Falcons can't win 8.5 games. They have a question mark at quarterback, and they can't win 8.5 with Desmond Ridder. Well, it doesn't sound like they have a question mark. It sounds like you already have the answer that he cannot play and he's not good enough. I don't know that he's good enough for sure, but that doesn't automatically make him a negative. That makes him a question mark. It's an X factor. He is a huge X factor in this team. I don't even know how huge it is, honestly. It could be between them being competent and being really good.
Yeah.
I think the floor on this team should be about 7 wins again. Where they were last year, based on the upgrades and the personnel, it shouldn't be any worse than they were last year. The X factor for me is if he's better than average to good, this could be a 12-win team.
Yeah, I mean, certainly possible. I'd probably go one lower and you in the win-loss is 6 just because wild things happen. So like you could have a crazy rash of injuries and that would, change the outcome. But yeah, I think this is a team that Vegas got them right in terms of the over-unders here. And the NFC South is prime for the taking. Don't really like what the Saints have done overall, though Derek Carr is probably the best known quantity quarterback in the division, so you can't rule them out. Bucks are tossing this season. Are they in the hunt for a quarterback next year? I don't know. That's a team that's I'm not buying any stock in the Buccaneers. And then the Panthers, you've heard me talk on here a lot. I really like the makeup of that team, but rookie quarterback adds a lot of question marks early on. So Kevin Mapp, I don't know. Don't think he will be. But if he's bad, how long will Smith go with Ridder before a change? He seems pretty loyal to Ridder, so I think it'd probably have to be a good chunk. I mean, we saw last year with Mariota as well that he rode that bus for a long time, so I think he's going to give him quite a runway.
Yeah, 17 games, minus 4 starts, 13 games?
Yeah.
And Mariota was way up and down. I mean, he was like NFC Player of the Week twice.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the worst rated quarterback 3 times. So, and those early turnovers were just like, oh yeah, we're playing really well. We're in it. And Mariota just, just give it away.
Yeah.
Drake London had a little bit of that give the ball away problem too. So, that hopefully that stuff will get cleared up. But, I think it should be a decent runway. I agree with him. I agree with Nick that, and you don't want to go in saying, how long, but if you're 0-4, there might be a problem. But if you pull him, you're done with him. I just think that it'd be hard to come back from that, because if you pull him, it'd be hard to get back in for anything other than an injury, because then you're looking at quarterback in the next year's class. Without a doubt, you are all in on quarterback in the next year.
You're probably right. I mean, you see it in college football all the time. Sometimes a guy just needs a series off or, something to get his
College is
head right. And
different,
then he
though. They're recruiting. They're not under contract.
yeah.
They're trying to hold on to a guy to keep him from transferring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to say, but college is different. You do see that in college, though, where guys do that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Ritter. I mean, you didn't like a quarterback enough to take him there early after the first 3 went. So next year, will you be in a position to take one? It could be a pretty good class. We'll have a chance to get into the quarterbacks if we want to. A few more games to announce here that have been announced. Before we started here, they announced that Christmas Day you have the Giants at Philly going to be on Fox. So that'll be a great game. Excited for that. And they also announced the Black Friday game, NFL's first ever Black Friday game on November 24th.
Brought to you. And where is that game going to be played?
New York.
Amazon.
In Amazon.
Those are all Amazon Prime games, if I'm not mistaken.
The Christmas game is on Fox, but yes, you're right.
But I mean the Black Friday game. Oh, the big commercial retail game is on the big commercial retailer.
Yep. And make sure you're tuning in on Cyber Monday following the game. You can start now. Cyber Monday is now. Join us, and you can order your Tua Tagovailoa and Aaron Rodgers bobbleheads. But on Friday, November 24th, they're going to have the Dolphins versus the Jets. So it's so weird to see Aaron Rodgers rocking that number 8 uniform for the Jets. But yeah, a lot of games announced. We're starting to get an idea. Also, just given the math here, this one could be wrong, but I saw a tweet on this. Shout out to Marcus Mosher, who covers the Cowboys. But Cowboys rotate every other year, AFC, NFC for Thanksgiving. And there's only one team left that could make sense for them given their schedule, according to Marcus Mosher. And that would be the Patriots at Dallas for Thanksgiving. So watch that one. It's not announced yet.
Bonanza.
Yeah. So that'd be a fun one.
So want to say hello to Eric coming in. He says, coming in late, but good morning, gentlemen. And you know what? He's coming in big. He's not just coming in late. He's coming in big. So thank you for being here, Eric. And if you have any other questions, obviously, and this goes for everybody, hit me up in the chat afterwards. Our last one talking about the Colin Cowherd wins and losses. There's probably 50 comments on that one after the fact. So if there's a question, anything, I read every single one of them. If there's anything in there you need me to hit, I will. And Eric, appreciate you coming in orange with the super chat. Helps keep the lights on and helps keep my forehead nice and shiny so that we know the lights are on. So thank you, my friend, to you and Gary Palmer, who have both come in with super chats today.
Now, we appreciate you both coming in and supporting us on this Wednesday morning show. Scott, I don't know. We talked about this. Is there any other points you wanted to hit on before we start to wrap it on up? Give a chance for some more supers to matriculate on in.
Yeah, we'll hit. And I already texted London this morning. I said, "Hey, you want to go to a Falcons game?" Asked my daughter. Said she hasn't been to London. We took my son to Europe, but my daughter hasn't been, so I might drag her over. So any excuse for me to get over there, I'll try and make it. Chelsea's coming to Atlanta in July. I figure we'll bring Atlanta to London in October. But Brandon asks, he says, what new team has a chance to make the playoffs this year? That's a good question. Who are some of the teams? Let's look at the NFC South. I could make an argument really for any one of the other 3 teams, for the Panthers, for the Saints, for the Falcons. Now, obviously, I know more about the Falcons than I do the Saints and the Panthers. Rookie quarterback in the Panthers. The Panthers' defensive pieces were scary good. When the Panthers decide they want to play, they're a good football team. They have been the past couple of years. 21 and 2022, I think the Falcons split both games with them. And it was just like, okay, which team wants to show up between the two? Oh, and there's actually a good question too. Someone asked about Trey Flowers. So we'll hit on that and then we'll probably get out of here. I like what the Falcons have done. Is Derek Carr a big enough of a difference maker in New Orleans to drag them to the playoffs this year?
Very possible. I mean, I don't really trust the offensive infrastructure of that team, but Michael Thomas is going to be back. We'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara with that whole Vegas incident. But Derek Carr is the best quarterback on paper in that division, so they got a chance. I don't love them. I mean, the defense is getting much older. They didn't have draft picks and money to really spend on that defense this year either. So they're a weird team. They scream 8-9, 7-10, 9-8 to me, which might be enough to get in the NFC South. We will see. I would take the Panthers and the Falcons over them. But yeah, the NFC South, I think that's who's the team that's most likely to get in there that we haven't seen in the playoffs last year. Somebody from the NFC South, because again, like I said earlier, I'm not betting at all on the Buccaneers. I don't know about Todd Bowles. I don't know about Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield. No thanks.
All right, looking at the Falcons' schedule right now, and that's how I'm looking at this. I'm like, Green Bay Packers, nah, they don't do it for me. Minnesota Vikings, they made it last year, so they don't count. They're a good team. These are the home games. Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts, don't feel good about them turning it around. Carolina Panthers is a maybe. Saints are a maybe. Buccaneers went last year. Commanders, maybe. The team on the aways, Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, they made it. Didn't Detroit sneak in last year?
No, they got beat in week 17 or week 16 in a game they should have won. They got taken to by the Panthers. They'd have beaten the Panthers.
Two then. Detroit Lions,
Yep.
I think, have a chance to make the playoffs. And then the final one, as they're listed here, and I can't tell what order they're listed in, but it's the New York Jets. The Jets were a solid team with atrocious quarterback play. Now, Aaron Rodgers might not be the two-time MVP, or he's won more than that, but the back-to-back MVP that he was 2 years ago. But he's going to be a humongous upgrade over what they've had last year. And they were hanging around the playoffs all year despite atrocious quarterback play. Now, that's awful quarterback play. Desmond Ridder is not that.
No.
That was awful quarterback play, and they were still right there. So I'm going to say Lions and Jets.
Those are the two teams that outside of the entirety of the NFC South, I was looking at the standings. Like, Lions really stand out to me here, as do the New York Jets. Not really much in the AFC. Maybe somebody will surprise. I mean, last year, you were the one who pretty much nailed it in my head that never discount Mike Tomlin. Who knows what happens with that Steelers team in the AFC North is a
never had a losing season.
Yeah, I mean, still 9-8 last year, so pretty darn incredible out there. The AFC South, I mean, it feels like it's the Jags or nobody there, how it looks right now. So, interesting one too. I think the Patriots defense is going to be one of the best on paper this season. If Bill Belichick, I mean, and also we talked about the Broncos going from total lack of institutional control and competency.
See, in my mind, I always have them in the playoffs anyway. So I would have. So I can't remember the week. They've expanded the playoffs so much. I can't remember who all made it. So I'm going way off the cuff here. The Lions and Jets.
Yeah, true. I just the point about the Patriots is they could have the best defense in football, and they are going from absolute clown show offensive staff with Matt Patricia, who's never coached the offensive coordinator before, being the offensive coordinator for that team. Now, and bringing Bill O'Brien, who's like not, a renaissance man as an offensive coordinator, but like an adult who's done the position before. So that's a team that also could possibly make that move. I think the Patriots have the worst odds to win the AFC East right now. And I'm like, and it's like pretty different. Like that's one that's like, I mean, if I was interested in betting, maybe toss some money there because AFC East could be interesting.
Yeah, especially if they're the worst, you get some odds there. That's like I was flying into Orlando one time and it said 0% chance of rain in Central Florida. Give me some of that action. Yeah, it rained. It rains every day in Central Florida in the summertime. Coming in right as rain is Michael Ranquillo, coming in with a huge top rope, Jimmy Superfly Snuka splash elbow off the top rope with a super chat, helping to keep the lights on for us and helping to support everything we do. Michael, we love you for it. And all of the support you give us off air as well on social medias with the shares and everything. You're a big part of what we do. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave this up here while we get this last point that Eric asked about. And someone else did too. Eric helped remind me. The Trey Flowers pick. So they've now signed, I think, a couple of defensive backs. Jesse Bates was a headliner. Trey Flowers, Atlanta Falcons signing. Your thoughts?
I like the move. This is a team that they're looking for more of those elephant ends, so to speak, the bigger guys, and it's somebody who has the ability to play outside. They used him a lot in a like a 3-3-5 or a 3-2-6 defense out there where he's big on the edge and can kind of be that tweener body from interior defensive lineman to edge position. It gives you somebody in that Zach Harrison body type and role that this team had a lot of speed, finesse, smaller body types at the edge outside of Harrison. Now you add another one to that defensive line rotation. They're going to be a rotation heavy front up there. We talked about earlier. It'd be nice if they had a superstar up front of that defensive line. Well, if you don't have that, what's the best way to counter that? Have a bunch of B-level players on the defensive line. And Flowers, while he definitely fell off from Patriots to the Lions out there, he can come in and compete for a spot and maybe catch something there. So I think it's a good sign. I think Flowers is a good body type and a fit for what you're looking for on this scheme.
Patriots Alliance. So he's been around a little. He was.
Wait a second. I'm thinking of this Trey Flowers. I was thinking
You
of.
threw me off a little bit on this. I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, he is big. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. But Trey Flowers he came from the Bengals and he was drafted by the Seahawks.
Who was the? Okay, I totally mixed up. Was there a second Trey Flowers? Who was the name of the edge rusher that came from Arkansas that played for the Patriots and signed a huge deal with the Lions? Excuse me.
I don't know, but I'm interested now.
Okay.
Jeremy, thank you. I'll give you my thoughts on Trey Flowers because I helped write up the article. Was special teams, rotational guy, good size, but I think this is a special teams play early and a depth piece. So when we talk about instead of getting cast-offs from the Bears and Titans, you can shop a tier higher than that for a lot of these guys for depth, and that's what the Falcons have been doing. So that's where this is a guy to bring in that can make the 53. Maybe he's not active all the time, depending on how you got. But after you waived Casey Hayward, who was getting long in the tooth and had an injury last year, this could be a replacement for a fifth cornerback and a key special teams player with good size and speed at 6'3", 200 pounds. But I don't see him being a big contributor. I don't necessarily want him to be a big contributor to the Atlanta Falcons.
And I got to say that the guys that I was talking about, his name was Trey Flowers.
Okay.
Also. So I was like, God, that name that's not what I remember. So selected in the 4th round by the Patriots and had some really good seasons. And then the Lions paid him a massive contract. So different Trey Flowers. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not much familiar with Trey Flowers, the defensive back. So I'll have to kick it over to you on that one. I have not watched him. I do remember him being big, actually, now that you mentioned that, but I was thinking that they brought in the pass rusher, Trey Flowers. So disregard.
Yeah, quarterback Trey. Yeah, that's a bad pun, but very possible, actually. You know, I like, Okudah and AJ Terrell. What happened? Did I just boot Nick or did he just boot himself on accident? Okudah and AJ Terrell look like 1 and 2, and here's hoping that Okudah makes them make a Caleb McGarry type of decision because they did not pick up his 5th-year option. And it would be nice if we're worried about how much they're going to have to pay him to keep him in free agency next year. Jeffrey Okudah. Mm-hmm. I want that. I want Okudah to Caleb McGarry of the Falcons next year. It's like, oh, well, they're going to have to pay him a ton. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. That would be a good problem to have. That means Jeffrey Okudah played wonderful this year. Yeah. I'll take that problem.
Yeah. You almost said fine there, and we know how we feel about the word fine. That would be fine.
Fine. I look fine? Oh, God.
Yeah, and Nick accidentally closed out the Trey Flowers link there. He thought he was and accidentally closed out StreamYard instead. So I'm back just in time to say goodbye.
Yeah, so aloha. That's a perfect time for aloha. Nick just offed himself. Roderick says a nice, easy listen. So want to say thanks to everybody for being here. Hit a like on your way out. Tell a friend if you like what we're doing. We are growing, and you can help us grow more. And it helps us do more things, more shows, better equipment. Send us to London so we can pod live from London. All of those type of things. Want to say thank you to Gary. I want to say thank you to Eric and Michael Ranchio, especially as our Super Chat superstars today. So thank you very much. Nick and I will be back tomorrow morning on Mile High Huddle, and then we'll be back next Monday for the Falcons podcast, 9 a.m. And you can find us on Apple Pods. Give us a review. It's Apple Pods. It's the nice and easy. It's the Falcons podcast. So thanks everybody again for being here. We went a full hour. I wasn't sure we were going to, so it flies by. Thanks for being here, y'all. Nick, I will see you tomorrow morning, and everybody else, it's hump day and we're on the way back down. Have a great weekend, everybody.